I sought to find somebody to take to the temple using descendancy research, and so when I was looking on the descendancy view of one of my ancestors, I was noticing that many of the temples that came up were blue. Now, when I first approached this temple for Bertha was green, and I went ahead and followed through and made changes and then requested the ordinances and then realized that this would be a good demonstration video. So since then I backed out of all the things I did, and she now has green temples, but somehow the temple system hasn't updated the this big temple icon. So that's the person we're working with. And I'm going to go to her person page. The thing I always am trying to emphasize with these videos is never to request somebody's ordinances without spending some time on their person page. If you had waited for 100 years to have your ordinances performed and you saw an ancestor finally finding you, wouldn't you hope that they would spend 15 or 20 minutes with you and get your information as accurate as they could within their limited abilities and see if there was any missing family members? So for instance, Bertha doesn't have a spouse. What a shame it would be if I went ahead and just automatically took Bertha to the temple as is, never finding her spouse, and then I would be removing the red flag of somebody seeing a green temple that says, hey, come here and spend some time with this person. So if you're getting ready to request ordinances, I just admonish you to go and spend time on their person page and see what you can do to improve the information there. As we go here, you notice we don't have any record hints, but we do have 3 sources already attached. And it's been my experience that a lot of times people attach sources and then fail to mine the information that's in them. So as I click on these sources, you can see I've got a 1900 census record, a 1910 census record, and an Indiana marriage record. Now, 1900 census records are my favorite census record because they provide the month and year of the birth and seem to be more accurate in terms of birth dates. And so as I look at this one source that's already attached here, I've got Bertha with Levi and Lucinda, and her birth date is July of 1896 in Indiana. So when I come back to Bertha, I can add July of 86 instead of 1897. And so all I would do is click this, change the 1897 to July of 1896. The computer always offers me the correct formatting, and if I click it, it'll take that. And then I'm just going to here say verified on 1900 census record. And then save it. Now, I've already improved the birth information. I will see later if I can get the death information. What I want to see now, since I saw that I have a source that was a marriage record, I'm wondering if I've got marriage information. So here's my Bertha Kivett, and her birth date is July of 1896 in Indiana. So, and her parents are Levi and Lucinda, who were our Bertha's parents. So we know this is our Bertha, and therefore we've got a husband to add, Wayne, and we've got a marriage date to add, and a marriage place, and we've got Wayne's birth date and birthplace. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a second person page for Bertha by right-clicking on this person link down here and opening a link in a new tab. This way I can look back and forth for the information. So I'm going to come down to the add spouse, and I'm going to remember that Wayne Rusher is my spouse, and he's a male and he's deceased, and he was born in 27 September 94. And then birthplace, it was Huntington, Indiana. And then I'm going to say next. Now, at this point, there's a good chance that the system already has Wayne in it, and I just need to identify him. We'll see. So I've got a Wayne Rusher, born on 27 September. That's what I entered, and it says they didn't find anybody, so I need to create that person. I always want to do this step well, because if there is a person who is my individual in the system, I don't want to create another one and make a duplicate. So I create it, and now I've got the spouse for Bertha, and I've got enough information to take him to the temple as well, you can see. And so now what I'm going to do is come back and add in this marriage information. You do that by clicking the pencil and paper right on the right side of the marriage box. And the third box down in the box that opens up is marriage events. So if I click add event, I'll just come back here and say it happened on 9 March 1918 in Huntington, Indiana. 9 March 1918. And Huntington, Indiana. And then I will say verified on marriage record. And then I will save it. So now I have standardized marriage information, marriage place, and I've added a husband. If I wouldn't have done this, you can see that what would have happened is I would have taken Bertha without a spouse. Now I'll be able to seal her to her spouse as well, and I think she's going to appreciate that quite a bit. Now I can also hope that I can find a 1920, 1930, 1940 census and add some children here. I won't be able to take them to the temple, but eventually they'll be able to be taken to the temple, and I will have been completing the information about a family. So we'll see if that comes about. I don't have any other sources. I've milked my sources that I've got. And oh, one other thing though, it seems to me, is Wayne Rusher. If I go ahead and open him, I don't have parents for him. And on that marriage record, I've got D.E. Rusher and Addie Stahl. So I can come back here and do D.E. Rusher. He's a male and he's deceased. And that's all I know about him from that record. And I go ahead and create that. And so now I've got that parent, and I want to add that spouse. And that spouse's name was Addie Stahl. And she would be deceased as well. And so I create that person. So now I've been able from that one record to add Wayne and his parents. And now this is interesting, isn't it? I've got these different sources that have come up for Wayne that I didn't used to have because he didn't exist, first of all, and there wasn't enough information, secondly. But you'll remember he's married in 1918, so Bertha is going to be part of this census record if it's correct. And there she is, and they don't have, well, they do have a son who's 1 year old, which makes total sense. And so I'm going to go ahead and attach this. Now I'm attaching it with Wayne, but you'll see that I attach it to all three individuals as we go. So the census record information's on the left and my information's on the right. I can swing over where they live just by clicking the add, and I come here and say, why am I adding the source? Well, it verifies birth and family relations. And I attach it. And then I'm going to attach it to Bertha, and it does the same thing, verifies her birth information. We're not worried when a census record is off by a year. They are notoriously inaccurate. And then here's the son. Now I've got to create the son. And so I've got Merrill W. Rusher. He's a male, born then. I go ahead and standardize it while I am creating him. So I click behind Indiana, put in a space, and then the computer gives me Indiana, United States. So it's standardized right now. I don't know that he's deceased because he's still living within that 110-year rule. So I'm going to say that he's living until I can find proof that he's not. And then I create a new person. It's very possible I just created a duplicate of Merrill, but I don't have enough information to know differently. And now I'll click that where he lived at the time and the same reason. That quickly I added that source to 3 people. I'll go back to Wayne again, and you'll notice that I've also got the 1930 census record. So I'll attach that census, and I've got now I've got the parents, and that's kind of nice that Daniel instead of DE. I'll remember that. So Wayne, he lived there in 1930, and this verifies birth and family relations. And then there's nothing sacred about what I choose to put and what you might choose to put for your reasons. A lot of people write a whole bunch more in those boxes. Other people write less, but you're just trying to justify why you're doing what you're doing. So Daniel is mentioned in this census record, so he must be living with them at the time. We've now got a birth date that I was able to swing over, and so if we were, and I don't know that I'll be able to take Daniel to the temple because he's the father of an in-law of mine. Cousins, you can only take it when they come down. You can take your cousins and their spouses, but you can't take their spouses' parents. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in this residence, and I'll attach it to Daniel. I've got to remember to change his name. Then I'm going to add this to Bertha, and you'll notice that it verifies the birth again, and I'm going to attach it. And then Merrill, we don't have any additional children yet, and so I do that. You can see how quick it is to attach census records to a bunch of people when you do it through Family Search. Now I've got other sources that have come up here, but again, let me show you how even though Wayne needs his ordinances, I can take him to the temple because he's the spouse of Bertha. But if I want to come to Wayne's parents, DE, let me go ahead and quickly change that name. You'll notice that I've got Daniel's, the source right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put Daniel E, and then I'm going to say verified on the 1930 census record and save it. So now I've got the name right, but if I wanted to take him to the temple, even though it looks like I can, if you view the relationship, it says no relationship found. And so you should always be careful not to take somebody that you don't have a relationship to in that way. What I've done is make it so that somebody else that does have that relationship will have a green temple waiting for them and be excited to be able to take him to the temple. And so that's nice. I'm going to go ahead and come back to Wayne. I'll just go to one of these. And what I want is to get back to Bertha, who was my main beginning person. And now I'm ready to take her to the temple. I suppose another census record has appeared. This is the beauty of record hints, is the church's search engine goes out and searches their billions of records and finds more and more that are 97% likely to be matches to your people. And then the more information you put in, the more record hints they're able to find. So there will be times where you'll see this say that it's not standardized, and you go, well, what's it matter if it's formatted right? Well, the thing that it's saying when it's not standardized is the computer saying, I can't read that, and therefore I'm not going to use it in my search. And so that's why you always want to standardize information. But I'll go ahead and add this one more source to Bertha, which is the 1940 census record. Again, it verifies birth. And family relations. I attach it. Wayne is still there. They're living there. They've got 2 residences. And then Meryl's still the only son that we see. So that's interesting that we had that. Okay, and so now I'm going to go back to Bertha. We have no more record hints. I never did get a death date for Bertha. And so this is why I always love my Ancestry link. I don't have to work hard at it. I can adjust the search parameters in Ancestry once I get there if I want to, and I can be more intensive about my search. But I can also just take a quick look to see if Ancestry can find something that Family Search didn't. So I'm going to click Ancestry. And you'll notice I've got the the marriage record, and right below it I've got a death record. Now, this is interesting because if I hadn't added the husband and the birth date that I found, I wouldn't be able to be confident that this is my person. But now that I know that Wayne Rusher is her husband, I can see why that would be on her death certificate. And since I've got the July of '86, this is going to give me the birth date of 13 July of '86. So I very much want this record. I attach this record by clicking on it. The indexed information will come up, and I go ahead and highlight it. I copy it. I unhighlight it. If you don't unhighlight it, when you click Record Seek and say that you want to create a source in Family Search, right here will be all that you had highlighted, but it's kind of in a chaotic format. So by copying it, I'm able to now just paste it and have it be beautiful in those notes, and those notes tell me what's on the record. Then I go ahead and click Next, and I want to search, I want to come back to Bertha and get her ID number. And now I've got to drop down. This always hides behind the actual screen. I'm going to put in Bertha's ID number. I'm going to click Next. Now it tells me it's attached to Bertha A. Kivett. I know it's my Bertha A. Kivett because I used the number of my Bertha A. Kivett. And then I'm going to say that this verifies birth and death information. And before I create it, Family Search automatically tags things for you, but you have to remember to manually tag the information. So if you don't tag it, then the source will only be at the one area at the top of the page, and it won't be with each of the individual items. I go ahead and create and attach it, and then when I come back to Bertha, you'll notice right now she has 5 sources. I'm going to refresh the page. Bertha now has 7 sources, and the last source is that one that I just added of the death certificate. Now I'm going to come back to this Bertha here. I'll refresh that page even, and you'll remember that I had a better birth date, and it was 13 July. So I'm going to come here and add in 13, and I don't remember if it gave me any better of a place. Nope, it just says Indiana. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say verified on death record. And save it. So now with all of that I've done, I've been able to improve her birth record incrementally, and now if the computer will ever actually make this change, well, while it's doing that, we'll come back over here and say, okay, we want to also add the death date of 18 February 1970. I'm going to cancel that and do it over. I'm sorry. It was going awfully slow. Okay, it did. It made the change. Now I'm going to come to death, and I have 18 February 70. And then the place is Bern, Adams, Indiana. And you can see, usually by the time you get to the county, it'll be giving you the right information the rest of the way, and you don't have to put it in. and then I'm going to say verified on death record and save it. And so now Bertha, who had a very vague birth date, has a precise birth date and birthplace. Bertha, who had no death date, has a death place. She has a husband that she didn't used to have, and she has marriage information that she didn't used to have. And I feel so much better about taking her to the temple now than I would have had I just rushed her through, even though I could have taken her to the temple originally. So now I click on Ordinances, and I go ahead, and again, because the temple icon isn't updated, I'll click this request. It shows me that I can do all the ordinances. I request them all. I accept the rules of not doing famous people, not doing Jewish Holocaust victims, not doing people born within the last 110 years, and only my relatives. I accept that. It comes up, and now Bertha is going to be the top of my temple reserved list. And her husband and she being sealed. Now I've got to also go now and get Wayne and do his work as well. Since I found him and put him in, he needs to have all this done. I can't do the sealing until I get his work done as well.